Good afternoon. Welcome, everybody. I'm just going to still give a couple of seconds for those who are joining us right on the clock. Yes. Once again, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us in our masterclass on coping with financial stress. My name is Gabby, and I'm going to be your host in this masterclass. At the end of the masterclass, we are going to have a Q&A. So as the psychologists are leading you through different information, if there are any questions that pop up, you can drop them in the chat. You will see that in your tab. Or you can also use the questions function. And when you ask a question using the questions tab, other people can also upvote your question, so then it's more visible for us, and we know how to prioritize the questions. So today's psychologist and our speakers is going to be Jochem and Pia, and the floor is yours.
Great, thank you for that introduction, Gabby. And also on my behalf, welcome to this masterclass. Really lovely to be here today. Today we'll be talking about how to cope with financial stress, and we're going to be doing that, as you may have come to get accustomed to from us if this is not your first one, is that we'll be talking about three things today, which is oh, sorry, I lost the screen there for a bit. Yeah, sorry. Which is why does financial stress impact us so? What are some of the effects on psychological well-being that we can discern and discuss a little bit more? And of course, we're going to talk about some tools and techniques that we can that we know may help when it comes to coping with this a little bit more. I think it is important to note, firstly, that we've often talked about different ways of coping, right? And in general, we can talk about emotional related coping into problem focused coping. And I think, especially for financial stress, that there is a problem focused approach to this, which we would definitely wholeheartedly recommend. We are not here to tell you that your financial struggles are your own fault and that you should just fix that all of a sudden, right? We want to, I think, only emphasize that this is something that's really difficult, and that if you feel that you need help on a sort of more structural way than this, then really start getting that. So for that, we've also added and started off with some helpful links that, if you're in the UK or if you're English yourself, some things that you could check out. They have a national deadline. They have something called Pay Plan. There's foundations, advisor networks, financial wellness groups. All of these things help you in a really tangible, practical way in getting some more grip on your own finances. All of these can also be found in some of the articles on the Open Up site. And I do really want to refer you to this as well when it comes to sort of how do I organize my finances. If there are any Dutch people listening to this one, I think also good to mention the same masterclass in Dutch at 3 today. But if you're, for instance, not able to speak Dutch, which a lot of them here as well, there's a couple of things in from the Dutch side that you could try as well. The site that's called Uit de Schulden, and we have first aid with DAP, which is a second link here. We have Buddy Systems, which is the third one, and we have Nibud, and all of these can also more naturally here help you out with finances as well. So we wanted to start off with this because I think that we are, as psychologists, we are not financial coaches, and I think that's not what our aim is here. What we really want to focus on is sort of the effects of stress. So let's get into that a bit more. Why does it impact us so much? Is as we were preparing this masterclass, the first question that we started asking ourselves, and also the first one we want to address here. And we're going to be talking in literal circles for a couple of times today. And this is the first one, the first level of the model that we would like to show you here. And it's circular, right? So you could basically start at any point, right? We're seeing, for instance, that people that are experiencing difficulties in earning, managing, spending their money, that they have financial struggles. And then when you have financial struggles, that often causes stress, worries, some anxiety as well, which then would lead to mental health struggles, which again makes it more difficult to earn, manage, and spend money. And the cycle continues. Um, Apart from that, there is something that happens here, which I found Well, I guess the word is interesting, but not in a good sense. That there's some studies done in which they would compare what is the effect of financial stress on also our mental capabilities. So, right, that's also cognitive functioning, or IQ, if you would say. And they long had the suspicion that there was something going on with our ability to problem solve when it comes to being under financial stress. And in this one study they did in rural India, they found a sort of natural case study in which there were farmers who would get all of their yield at one point in the year, which meant they had at one point in the year a relative large amount of money, so they were comparatively rich for some time. And then as the year progressed, they would lose that money because they had to spend it on new equipment and whatnot. So at the other end of the year, they had relatively low money. In fact, they definitely reported a lot of financial stress in these periods. And they did cognitive tests for both, and they found a difference of 13 IQ points, which is an insane amount. So not only does it work in this cycle, it only apparently affects our ability to problem solve effectively. And something else that it does when it comes to our mindset is it tends to um, give us a bit of a scarcity mindset, by which we mean that we focus on what we don't have and how hard it is to get more things. And um, that has an effect on us, right? And I sometimes compare that to time pressure, right? Time can be scarcity. So if we don't have much time left, and sometimes we can really start performing better. A lot of people perform better under time pressure, for instance, or an artist that really has a deadline on this artwork he has to put in suddenly is able to do that. So on the short term, this definitely has benefits, but on the long term, it doesn't always have that. And we can see that scarcity then gives us that scarcity mindset, which again influences our cognitive function, which not only gives us stressful feelings um, to begin with, but also negatively impacts our ability and capability of dealing with that stress in a sort of a functional manner. Um, Again, also, I think Gabby mentioned at the beginning, if any of this raises questions or comments, feel free to add that in the chat right down here in the bottom. Or if it's recognizable, it's also good for us to get to know that a little bit further. Right. So this is sort of the first level that we're getting to, and then I think it's also very interesting to take a look at that second part for today, and that is checking in on the psychological well-being effects. Right. So how does this interact or work with the other parts of us? Um, and what we're seeing firstly is I think there's this major effect of taboo on that, and on having financial struggles in the first place. Um, which I think is very much connected to the fact that our self-worth and our sort of status in society is also in part sort of controlled, or at least in the perception of society, in how much wealth we gather. And I think conversely, to through that system or through that idea, whenever we're experiencing low wealth or in fact even financial stress, we tend not to talk about that because there's that sort of expectation we have of others and probably ourselves as well, that we should always do financially well. Was this UK study that was looking um, into this, and they found that about 50% of people struggle to talk about their financial situation, um, which could definitely lead to more shame and guilt, and I think also refrains people from actually actively getting help with that. Um, so it increases stress, it increases other uncomfortable emotions, that decreases our general sense of well-being. Um, Stress can definitely lead to that chronic activation, and to not diving it too much, but that's what we've seen in other master classes as well. That chronic activation is where the real pain is, right? And we can see that there's some behavioral changes coming up. We can see physical symptoms. I think it isn't a coincidence that a lot of people that are under chronic financial stress are experiencing illnesses, because it interferes with our body's capacity to deal with all of this. Um, and you can see a lot of the things come back here that we're seeing in general chronic stress, right? So the common symptoms that are there, we see that we have an increase of impulsivity, Um, which I think connected to the financial part is something that if you have that sense of I have to keep my expenses in order all day long, that probably means that you're getting, but you're walking around in society where there's advertisements being bombarded and you all day, every day, right? You're being enticed to spend money on all these things, and some of the things you probably want to spend money on as well, but you're trying to refrain yourself from doing that. And I think whenever we're trying to refrain ourselves for extended periods of time, then this uh, makes us act out every now and then. And at some point, the pressure is on and it wants to get released. Apart from that, I think it also can definitely increase our difficulty in paying attention. It can lead to some memory deficits as well, again, to that negative effect of cognitive functioning. And I think in general, what it does, it really affects our bandwidth, our ability to deal with different things on our own, because a large part of our bandwidth is being taken or occupied with with our financial worries. So symptoms may differ, and I think that's one of the key points here is to check out how is this exhibiting with me. What kind of complaints am I experiencing, and what part of that could be connected to my financial stress. Um, so that brings us to the sort of second circle. If you notice that first one here, that's the bottom, the outer one, mental health struggles, difficulty earning, leading to financial struggles, that causing stress again. And then when we're there, we're seeing that uncomfortable emotions may lead to avoidance as well. And this is just often where it becomes a bit more extreme in the sense that people may have debts, for instance, and they start avoiding opening them or start avoiding talking about their financial situation as a whole, which tends to make the struggles even worse, right? Than we get because we're working in a system where debts usually cause more debt. So the financial struggle increases. All that suppressing of negative emotions connected to finances usually lead to more uncomfortable emotions, and then the sort of cycle continues from that point on. So this is sort of the top view, and you could also see it a little bit like this, right? It's a sort of a spiral that we can see happening of these different effects um, interacting there. And I think the key is here to recognize where we are at the spiral. I think the very first way of intervening in this is where we started off with, right? In getting some help from a financial expert or help group there. Another point of intervention could be at your own mental health part, because if that goes better, then that's another way to reverse that um, reverse that spiral, at least for a little bit. So this introduction has been realizing that if I'm hearing myself speak here a bit more grim, because it's I think also definitely a bit more of a grim subject. I do really want to go to also how can we get out of this spiral? What may help us? And for that, I'd like to go to the techniques and the tools that we can use to cope with that. And I'd like to invite my colleague Pia here. Good luck.
Thank you. Thank you, Joachim, for the introduction. So I will now go a bit over, like we said, the mental health aspect that financial stress causes us. And again, we want to really point out that there are two aspects of it. There is the practical aspect, which is, for example, seeking support or advice of a financial expert. And then there is the second part, which is the mental stress that we can suffer as a consequence from financial stress. And this is what we will focus on in the second part. So Joachim already shared some of the emotions that can come up, the difficult emotions, the uncomfortable emotions when we experience financial stress. That can be worry, anxiety, but maybe also shame or embarrassment or even guilt, right? And these emotions can sometimes be very overwhelming and they can take up almost every moment or aspect of our life sometimes. And then we can imagine that they are like hands covering up our faces, just like this, right? So all these emotions, all these uncomfortable emotions are always there. They're really overwhelming, they're really overtaking. And I can see that through my fingers. I can hardly see the world around me, nor can I really act in an efficient way because my fingers are blocking me. They're blocking my view, they're blocking my range of action. And in the same way, these uncomfortable emotions like worry, anxiety, shame, guilt can overtake and keep me so busy that I have trouble thinking or concentrating on anything else, let alone really doing something effectively. Hence, also the psychological symptoms that Jochen mentioned before: difficulty concentrating, the memory deficits, etc. However, if I learn to cope with my stress and my emotions, it might be still present, but not longer so overwhelming. So it's just like distancing my hands. So, of course, my struggles are still there. They do not disappear, and neither do my emotional reactions to them. But I'm creating some distance between me and them. So they're still present, they're still there, but I can suddenly see the world around me and I can act in a more effective way. So that's what we want to achieve with the techniques and tools that we want to show you now. And the question is, how can we create this healthy distance from our emotion and our stress? How do we go from this overwhelming to effective action? So the first part is, we know the circle. And Joachim already mentioned that it's a very natural tendency also, if we feel uncomfortable emotions, if we feel stress, that we tend to avoid that. Yeah, we tend to look away, to kind of ignore it, and to not face those uncomfortable emotions. And that can lead us deeper into that cycle. And then it becomes an upward spiral. So the first thing to do is to pause and look at what is there. Not looking away, but taking a look right at it. What are your worries? What are your fears? What makes you feel maybe embarrassment or shame or guilt? Maybe after the session, when you're live here, you want to take a moment to really think about this and reflect on it. Maybe if you watching this video later, you can take a moment to pause and think about this, to really look at it and look what is happening here. And sometimes it can also help that you can give it a name or a shape or a form. Sounds a bit silly, but for example, if I recognize that I'm really worried or that I'm feeling a bit anxious about my financial situation, I can recognize that, yeah, maybe I give this anxiety a name. Let's call it Nancy. Okay. So instead of Nancy being right in my face and me being anxious all the time, I can create some distance. And I can recognize that this anxiety, Nancy, is sometimes there, sometimes coming and knocking on my door and saying, "Hey, I'm still here. Please remember to be alert and anxious because your financial situation doesn't look good." But I can also tell Nancy, my anxiety, "Hey, right now I need to focus on work. Right now I need something, I need a pause, and please give me some time, give me some space," right? So then I already have this distance. Okay. And we also want to say that when it comes to stress, or anxiety or worry, it's a very natural tendency of the brain to ruminate about the things that we cannot control. So what happens is that we get in our heads, go through all the oh, here's the slide for sitting with the emotion. So now continuing that, yeah, there is this natural tendency of our brains to worry about the things that we cannot control. And that happens with our brain painting all those countless possibilities of what could happen, what if, what then. And we try to go through what we can do in each of these situations. And this is all happening to uphold an illusion of control, right? So we think if we imagine all the possible things that could happen, then we can prepare for them and then everything will be fine. But really, we actually cannot really foresee the future. Now we can never know what will happen next. And all of this thinking, all of this worrying about the future actually is like the hands in front of your face again, right? You're constantly busy thinking and preparing, and it's overwhelming and exhausting and sometimes even paralyzing. So if you struggle with this financial stress, with these emotions, it can help to dissect them. And this is when we come to the so-called circle of control. And we see that there are 3 different circles. The middle gray one stands for the things that we can control or influence. Then there is a middle part of the things that we can only indirectly influence. And then there's a large part of things that we have no control over. So let's start with the latter, the things I have no control over, and the so-called circle of concern. And like I said before, it's very natural for us to ruminate about the concerns that we have no control over. But a really important question is to ask yourself, is it helpful to do that? Is it really leading anywhere? To constantly think about that. So yeah, the answer is it's not really helpful because in the end, you actually cannot do anything about it. So that is why a key word here is acceptance. The situation is like it is, and we're not getting anywhere by denying it or ignoring it or fighting it or actually overthinking it. And what helps with acceptance is such a big term. How can we accept situations or things? And for me, key word here is mindfulness. And that's why I would like to go through a quick breathing exercise with you. And for that, you can take a comfortable position. Maybe you want to close your eyes or soften your gaze for a moment. Bringing your attention to your breath. You can slowly breathe in through your nose. Maybe breathe out through your mouth. You can imagine that with every breath out, you're letting go this worry, anxiety, the stress. Breathing everything out that is not helpful. Okay, and then let's come back to the session. So I don't know how you're feeling, but I'm feeling a bit more calm already, even though it was maybe a minute. And that's where we also see in practice that with these stress reduction techniques, with breathing exercises, with mindfulness, we can really, let go of uncomfortable emotions, let's say. They can calm down our nervous system, help us practice acceptance. And then if we are able to let go of these uncomfortable emotions, of the stresses, of fighting the situation, then we can actually bring our energy and our time to the circle of control. So now we come to the 2 inner circles. So there are things in our life that we can influence, but we cannot control them, like our health, our interpersonal relationships, business success, and other things. So there's a component that we can control, and there is a large component that we cannot control. And then there is the circle of control. So there are a few things in life that we can actually truly influence and control. And on the slide, you see some examples, but we can really boil it down to your choices, your actions, your behavior, your words. And here is where we want to bring our focus, not to the things that we cannot control, like the economic situation, the state of the world right now, financial, feeling stress, feeling these emotions, these things we cannot control. They're there if we want them or not. But what we can control is how we react to them, how we act. Yeah? So in the example of financial stress, what I can control, for example, is seeking the advice of an expert. Yeah? Going to a support group with other people that also struggle, or deciding that you are going to share your concerns and your struggles and your uncomfortable emotions with trusted friends or family members. Yeah? These are the things that I can control, that it's worth spending my energy on. Also trying to shift my focus to, positive things. So maybe things that we can still we still have, that we can still be grateful for despite the financial stress that we're feeling. Okay, so to summarize the tools, there's a difference between active and passive coping. So we already spoke about the part of the active, proactive coping that is also practical things like talking to an expert, seeking support of expert or organizations that can really help you with practical things. And then there's the whole mental health topic, and that includes maintaining your healthy habits, but also maybe practicing mindfulness or breathing exercises to calm down your nervous system and your emotions. You can try writing, or also another technique that I'm going to show you now. These techniques can help you to organize your thoughts, to calm down, and again make this differentiation between what do I control and what do I need to accept because I cannot control it. So as a last giveaway, as a little tip, we wanted to also show you this technique. It's called the worry time technique. And the idea is, we already said, it's very natural to worry if we are in a distressing situation. So what I can do is, instead of worrying the entire length of the day, I choose a certain moment of the day that I want to, actively worry, and allow yourself to ruminate about those difficult aspects, those worries and fears that you have, and the things that you cannot control. So it's not suppressing constantly your rumination, your overthinking, but dedicating a certain amount of time, for example, 15 minutes. And then the rest of the day, I can just refer back to that momentum, right? So maybe now I'm at work and I'm wanting to concentrate, and then this fear or worry pops up. And then I say, okay, no, wait, I'm going to maybe write it down. And then I'm going to think about it tonight in my worry time. Okay. And in that way, I'm kind of keeping the majority of my day free of worries and fears. And then I have this dedicated time to really think about the things I feel are needed to think about. Or, I want to dedicate some time to. So this as a little last tool to share with you to try this out. And then we are already at the end of our input. So to sum things up, Joachim shared that financial stress has a tremendous effect on our well-being. We saw that study of that it actually even influences our IQ points, that we struggle concentrating, and we feel a lot of uncomfortable emotions. But that here is this cue that it's good to not try to get so wrapped up in those uncomfortable emotions, including worry, fear, anxiety, stress, but also shame and guilt due to the societal taboo about money and financial stress. We really want to encourage you to seek the help and the support you need in a practical way. We share those tips and organizations that can give you some advice when you're facing financial struggles. And then it's in your control to take care of your mental health in the meantime, with those tools and advices and ideas that we shared just now. Great. And of course, if you feel like, I don't know, Gabby, do you want to say this? Or
You can go ahead, no worries.
yeah. So if you feel like it's too much, these stresses, these emotions, that you can always book a session with us. So me and Joachim, or our amazing team of psychologists, to discuss this further and learn more tips and tools.
Thank you so much, Pia. Thank you, Joachim, for the presentation. If anyone has any questions, please drop them in the chat. I saw that we had a question about how to deal with an overthinking spiral, but I think you already addressed that beautifully with the worry time exercise. And one question that we had was, where does impulsive spending come from, especially when you're already struggling with finances? I mean, is it like a counterintuitive reaction to the stress that you're feeling, or how does it really work?
I said, because I think I try to at least address that for a bit in that first part, because it's definitely one of these things where we can see, well, humans not helping themselves, right? You would say that it would be the first thing that's in your circle of influence or your control, even, that you don't spend money that you don't have. But unfortunately, that's exactly what we see happening. And I think there's many theories on that, but my personal one would be that the more we try to suppress certain needs that we're having, the more that it's trying to get out, right? So if we have extended periods of inhibition, trying not to do something, then at some point we want to get out, and we're trying to do that in any way. Sort of maybe a similar example would be if you're trying to lose weight, but you're setting yourself next to a pie all day long, looking at it, telling yourself, do not eat this, do not eat this, similar to do not spend money, right? It's going to get way harder to actually do it. And what's going to happen, that maybe you're able to maintain that sort of strict order for yourself, but as then at some point you become, perhaps you have less resilience. That's what often happens, right? Or so you have a setback and you go back to sort of something that you know is going to make you feel good on the short term. So it's also coming from, being reinforced in that on the short term, that the short term effect often of buying something, even if you don't need it, is a little bit of dopamine. It's a little bit of a reward. On the long term, of course, it's going to have detrimental effects, but on the short term, it's definitely there. And that's also often what we're doing in these sessions. You get people to see that difference. What I'm doing, what does it do on the short term? What does it do in the long term?
Yeah. And to add on that, I think is similar maybe also with emotions, right? If I suppress things, one moment of not paying attention and suppressing actively this urge or this need or this emotion, it might come back up with full force and hit me in the face, kind of. So maybe that's a similar mechanism here.
Yeah. And I see another question about how can you ask for help when, let's say, you've done it in the past before and it was not a great response. So how do you build up that trust again, whether with yourself or with somebody else, and just really take the brave step to ask for help?
Well, I think first, sorry if I'm speaking too fast, Pia, if you want to take it, go ahead. But,
No, I will add something maybe.
all right, great. Well, I think first off, I'm very sorry to hear that. What I sometimes have when I'm trying to encourage people to speak up and get the help they need, what we would hope for is to get sort of this empathic, great response from our surroundings. But the fact that we have a company that's actually called Open Up has something to do with the difficulty in doing that, right? That apparently we need people to help us with that. So let's acknowledge that this is part of that process of opening up, is also that you're not going to get that um, response that you want to have. Um, I think it is trying to resist then the notion to go to straight to that conclusion that therefore it does not work for me. Perhaps it did not work for you at that time with that person, but perhaps there is other people you can also talk to, or go to one of the links that we shared at the beginning and get some more professional help with that. Or even, of course, again, also the invitation there. If there's anything that we can do for you, feel free to do that, and we can explore that further.
Yeah. And I think maybe it's also about looking at it, right? So if you had a hurtful experience in the past and now you worry that this might happen again, to really think, okay, what am I expecting here? What am I fearing? And how can I prevent that? Maybe by speaking to someone else or taking some other actions. So to really look at it.
Yeah. And I see another question. Well, what happens when you worry about the financial situation and decisions of your relatives, not necessarily your own?
That's difficult because that's also not in our circle of control, right? It's in maybe only our circle of influence what others do. So how I can influence is that I can talk to that person. I can try to open up in a very sensitive manner, of course, and to maybe discuss if we can be of any help, if there's anything they want to share. That is what I can control, my words, my actions to approach this person. But at the end, how they react and how they choose to spend their money at the end is not in our control. So if we cannot influence it and they choose not to listen to our advice, for example, then this is also something that unfortunately we have to learn to accept.
Yeah, I think I would agree there, and I think it is also okay that you can express your worry about that. That is there, and I think in the besides that, there's I think some kindness to be awarded there for what we've tried to do at the beginning of this presentation is show how much this affects us. So an often heard complaint is or an often heard solution to if you're having financial problems, just work harder, or you're not making the right decisions. And I feel like putting that blame on that individual isn't helping them. And I think that's also the case when we're talking to our relatives, even though to us it may seem very clear cut that you shouldn't be buying this or that, or you should try to get out of your debts in any way possible. So perhaps also see if we can show some kindness to their own process and see if we can support them in perhaps in their mental issues and letting them figure out their financial issues or vice versa.
Yes. Thank you for that. I'm just checking the chat once again if there are any new questions. Oh, this is a very good question. How does the financial experience, scarcity plus stress you had in your family of origin, impact your experience with money as an adult?
That is a really cool
That's
one.
a
Yeah,
good
yeah,
question.
yeah. That's definitely a sort of a psychological question. I think it can impact us majorly because uh, definitely some part of our behavior is not necessarily controlled, but at least influenced by our what we would call learning history, right? What did you learn as you were growing up? And I think as you're and I think we can even see this happening in people that grew up in scarcity and then suddenly become very wealthy, that this often leads to very unhelpful spending patterns, right? So I think it has a major input because then we can see what a big topic that was, and what we can often see with people who had that, it becomes this major topic as well. And I think you can see the opposite as well for people that didn't have that they cannot imagine what the impact of stress is if you've never actually had to financially worry. Um, so I think it can impact it in many different ways, but I think mostly that if you've had that scarcity, that you can even see that in your mindset, and if you're noticing yourself thinking in scarcity a lot, then that can't be very helpful for you. So maybe that's something that you could then focus on. How am I actually dealing with my money? Maybe I'm dealing it as if I have very little, even though I have some space to spend, and I can find some rest in that.
Yeah, and I think maybe you've heard of the term of core beliefs. So this is one way that this can also manifest our childhood experience, that we have some beliefs that we learn as children and we take them, yeah, up until our adult life. So again, the advice would be have a look at it, right? Try to reflect on what are your beliefs about money, what is your relationship on money, and is that really realistic or helpful, or is it worth overthinking it?
And I think we have time for one last question. How can you get rid of, like, quote unquote poor mentality when saving money, even though you shouldn't, even though you also want to spend it to enjoy life? So I guess that's a bit of a the dilemma to juggle the two things.
Yeah, that is difficult. Well, I think probably prioritizing, I would say. So really having a think, what is the balance that you can, yeah, you can make possible. So how much budget do you have to spend on fun things, and what do you want to spend it on, and really maybe choose one or two things that you want to prioritize because they're most important for you, and to do them, but maybe also to look for things that you can, or opportunities to enjoy life that maybe don't even include money, right? I think there are also plenty of them. And in that way, really reflect and plan ahead for that balance. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's the question before this is we I think we tend it's easy to forget that money is a means, right? It is something that it's not a, at least to me, it wouldn't be a goal on its own. It's numbers. So it would be good to check in what is actually important to me, right? Where are my values at? What would a fulfilling life for me look like? And then from that point on, what kind of expenditure belongs to that? Say for instance that traveling is something that's really important for you, or the value of adventure, so to say. That wouldn't mean that you probably need a lot of money to go traveling as well, and then you could then it'd be good if you're saving up a lot of money. But if you're, I don't know, in a comfortable position and you don't intend to spend a lot of money on anything because you want to focus on your family, for instance, also great. But then that's also perhaps you can buy them dinner every now and then, and go out for a nice experience. So I think it's really dictated on what is important for you as a person, and following that, what kind of financial decisions you could make.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone, for your questions and your interactions. Thank you, Pia and Johan, once again for this great masterclass. And as always, you will have this playback available on our website in case you want to watch it back and practice some of the exercises. Thank you once again, and we'll see you in the next one.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Bye bye.